al culto. Hola amigos, llegamos al culto de niños.
¿Y qué? ¿De qué se habló?
De Moisés.
Moisés.
Hola amigos. Hoy vamos a estudiar de Salmos 121 al 1 al 8. Alzaré mis ojos a los montes, de donde vendrá mi socorro. Mi socorro vendrá de Jehová, el que hizo los cielos y la tierra. No dejará que resbale tu pie, ni se afirmará el que te guarda. He aquí, no se adormecerá, ni se dormirá el que guarda Israel. Jehová es tu guardador. Jehová es tu sombra a tu mano derecha. El sol no te herirá de día, ni la luna de noche. Jehová te guardará de todo mal. Él guardará tu alma. Jehová te guardará tu salida desde ahora y para siempre. Amén. Yo entiendo en este salmo que Jehová te guardará de todo mal. El Espíritu Santo se moverá en todos nosotros.
Why do you guys think that God asked Moses to take his sandals off? Okay. Pero, ¿qué puede significar sus sandalias? If you guys come to church with shoes on and God doesn't tell you to take them off, in the Bible story, ¿qué puede significar las sandalias? What can the sandals mean? Like in a different point of view, not literally, but figuratively, kind of. Like what can they resemble? Dirty, being dirty, sin, pecados. So ellos estaban diciendo que los sandalias pueden significar siendo sucio y con pecado. Son unos puntos que yo encontré cuando estaba estudiando, que los sandalias, quitando las sandalias puede significar Moisés mostrando reverencia, humildad y respeto al Señor. So, reverence, humility, and respect. Okay? Those are three things that Moses could have been showing God when he reached the holy ground. Why? Porque se le hizo caso. Because he's God, yeah. Porque es Dios. Anybody else? Porque tenemos que obedecer a Dios y la palabra que le dice, dijo la hermanita Skyler. Y todos son ciertos. So, cuando ustedes se I can't show you this. On your knees. You guys are showing God that you guys are humbling yourselves. You guys are putting yourselves little towards God and you're giving yourself to Him. So you're being reverent to Him and you're humbling yourself because you know and you serve God who is above you, right? So it's kind of similar to that. So when you go down, you're showing Him that you're humbling yourself and you're little and He's bigger than you, right? Okay. También lo que están diciendo, las sandalias pueden significar cosas terrenales. So they can be a sign of earthly things. So when we were talking about cuando estábamos hablando de ser santos, estábamos hablando de ser holy, right? But because it was the presence of God, He would have died. Because in that time, when you enter the presence of God was so strong because of how much power it had, or it has, but how it presented itself back in the day. It had so much power that if you would have trespassed past what God told you to stop, you would have pretty much dropped dead. Yes? Okay.
And what part of the church we can find the fire?
Say that again?
And what part in the church we can find the fire?
That fire?
Yeah.
¿En qué parte de la iglesia podemos encontrar el fuego? En mi opinión, Pastor, dime si estoy incorrecta. Lo puedes encontrar en todo lugar, pero más fuerte en el altar, right? So, in my opinion, and Pastor said yes. So, you can find the fire all around you, everywhere in the church, but it's going to be strongest in the altar. Because that is where God is. That's where the presence of God is. That's why when Pastor's done preaching, he usually says, come to the altar. Because you're going to find God in the altar, right? Because you're humbling yourself in order to go over there and postrarte in the altar. Because it's not the same thing as praying in your seat. God's going to touch me here. His presence is going to come to me here if He wants to touch me. Then putting yourself in the position to go, making that decision to go and kneel in front of Him. Yes. Yes. That's the altar. No, just the whole thing. So, here, this line past is the altar. So when Pastor says to come after he's preaching, he says come, pray. If you feel like you need for God to touch you, come to the altar and pray, kneel before Him and pray. You go and you make that choice to kneel in front of Him and pray. Fuego. Y en esta ocasión, o en esta historia, el fuego es la presencia de Dios. So estábamos diciendo que la presencia de Dios lo puedes encontrar en todo lugar, pero más fuerte en el altar.
Bueno, yo dependiendo cómo viene uno también, aunque la presencia de Dios, bueno, en todo lugar, si uno lo busca, pero si usted no lo anhela, no lo busca, entonces, aunque haya presencia de Dios, pero usted no lo va a sentir porque no
Amen. Let me translate really fast. So she's saying, which is true, she's saying that yes, the presence of God is everywhere, but if you don't come with an open heart, if you don't come in the right way, if your heart is not open and ready to receive Him, you won't feel Him, right? So I can come to the altar and I can kneel down and I can be like, okay, I want God to touch me, but if my heart's not really open and I'm not actually ready and I'm not actually trying to receive the Lord and trying to be filled with His presence, I'm not going to feel Him. ¿Tenías algo?
Sí, solamente una corrección, mami. La presencia del fuego del Señor tú lo encuentras en Dios porque el altar es material, no puedes encontrar algo en algo material. El altar es solamente para...
Sí, pero él estaba preguntando por dentro de la iglesia. ¿Dónde?
Pero es la presencia del Señor. El fuego del Señor es cuando, el fuego es cuando desciende el Señor. Es cuando tú sientes algo más allá. Es algo que te quema por dentro. Entonces, cuando la presencia del Señor baja como fuego a tu cuerpo.
Okay. So, yes. The fire of God, this fire right here, isn't just fire. You guys know that?
Yes.
It's the presence of God. So, in general, with Sebastian's question, it's if the presence of God is there, it's stronger in the altar. But there are places where the presence of God isn't going to be there and it's not going to descend. So, overall, the fire, you'll find the fire where the presence of God is. Because there can be churches where the presence of God isn't there. Just, you know what I mean? So, if the presence of God is there, that's where you'll find the fire. But you also have to have an open heart to receive it. You know what I mean? Okay. So, let me explain it. So, when we're praying, Lily, when we're praying and we are asking God to descend His presence, when God descends His presence, it can feel like burning inside of you. I don't know if that explains it. I can explain it to you, but you have to experience it yourself in order to actually understand it. But sometimes the feeling of being full and the feeling of some people being in the presence, it can feel like a burning sensation. But when the presence of God descends, it is the fire of God descending over us. So he was saying it doesn't necessarily have to be the fire. It doesn't. I don't have to symbolize it as the fire. It's the presence of God. But he was asking in this story, where can I find the fire now, here in the church? It would be when God descends His presence. That's the fire. Does that make sense?
Por eso es importante que nosotros seamos reverentes con el altar y tener que llegar al altar. No es de que Dios no esté aquí, sí está, pero de la silla al altar hay obediencia, es obediencia. Entonces, Dios se manifiesta allá en el altar y por eso es importante. Si no, no hubiera un altar. Entonces es importante que los niños entiendan de que llegar al altar es algo extra que nosotros buscamos de parte de Dios.
Okay, so in the Bible, there is something called the tabernacle. It was something that Moses was God told him to build it. In the tabernacle, there was one room. It was covered by a velo. It was blocked off by a curtain. In the Bible, I read it about it. It was blocked off by a curtain, and it was the holy of holiest, something like, it was the most holy place in the tabernacle. The only people that could enter there were the priests. So in this, I guess you could say the only person that could enter would be like pastor. But here, the most holy place is the altar, and you can find God, the presence of God anywhere, but it is obedience. If you're being obedient to go to the altar and postrarte there. Does that make sense? So you can find the presence of God anywhere, but let's say if this was the tabernacle, that would be the holiest of holy places, and you're humbling yourself and you're being reverent and obedient to God to know that I'm making the decision to get out of my chair and to go and kneel at the altar. He had a word for him, but we weren't going to get into that. He did have a word for him. I I don't remember what the word was, but usually when God brings his presence in the Bible, it's usually to give a word to the server that he's talking to. Yeah. Okay. And then